If This Goes On, Don't Panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to If This Goes On, Don't Panic. Today we have historian and author of well over 120 novels, at least by my count, Harry Turtledove. Kat, how are things going?
They are going reasonably well for values of 2025. Well, I don't know. It may be spring, or it may not. We have sun today, which lately that guarantees we'll have snow the next day. So I'm hoping.
Right?
Yeah. How about you?
It's feeling nice here. Like the weather is finally warm. The kids are outside. It's nice. Yeah. I will say I am recovering from COVID still. So
No, that's right.
we were supposed to interview Malka Older, and the day before we were going to interview her, I tested positive for COVID and I felt like garbage. And
Yeah.
so we had to cancel that and push everything back. And I'm like 90% back energy wise.
I was going to ask if you had any after effects or possibly superpowers you had developed as a result, or
God, I wish I had superpowers that I developed. I did not. I did not. I will say though, the after effects have not been nearly as bad this time as they were last time.
So that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
A little bit of tiredness, you know what I mean, and it's just hanging on for dear life, and it will just not let go. But
yeah,
last time I had headaches for like 8 months, like really bad headaches.
Wow.
None of that at all this time, thankfully.
Well, that's good.
So so that happened. I also I want to give a shout out to all the folks at Concoction in Cleveland. I went to Concoction for the first time ever, and it was really fun. It was super tiny, but really fun.
Nice.
So yeah, that was cool. So to everybody from the con who's listening, thanks for listening. I had a great time. Plan to go next year.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really cool. One other piece of business I want to mention is I finally got some transcripts up.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Now I cannot see them. I don't know how to see them for some reason. Like I can't
You're just
figure out where they are exactly. So if anybody out there knows, maybe I'm just
if anybody figures out how to view our transcripts, they should.
I mean, I'm putting them in the thing that says put transcripts here, and so they should be there, right?
I'll poke around on the website and see if I can find them. How about?
Thank you. I would appreciate that actually, because I don't know. Maybe every time I go to look, I'm just too tired or something. But it's just not happening for me.
Who knows?
But everything from when we had Nadia Afifi and Zigzag Claiborne on to TJ Klune is on.
Oh, nice.
And I believe those are all uncorrected. So for everyone out there will probably be some mistakes in there. Just be aware of that. But we're finally getting them up. I'm finally starting to get those out there after what I feel like is a million years. So
awesome.
Oh, I almost forgot. I started putting our new logos on stuff too. Not our website yet.
Oh,
of
I
course.
saw that. Nice.
Yeah. So I'm super excited.
Spiffy looking.
They are so good looking. They're so good.
Yeah, they really are.
I had some new cards made, and when I was up at Concoction, I got so many compliments on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's cool. But that's it as far as business and stuff goes. Anything else you want to chat about?
I'm going to say I'm super excited to have Harry on because, as you know, I edited this book, and that doesn't happen very often. But I also, I'm sorry, I do have a piece of news. another book that I edited is actually on the Nebula ballot right now. Yaroslav Barsakov's book. So, yay!
Oh, awesome. Well, congratulations to you.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were actually going in on editing all these novels and everything until you mentioned Harry's. So
I've been doing it for Arc Manor. And then I do it for freelance clients as well. And then I'm going to do some for Jen Brozik's new Shadowrun magazine, I believe.
Oh, cool. Very awesome. Very awesome. Well, I definitely want to talk more about that, but I think we need to bring Harry on first before we get to that.
Yes.
All right. So when we get back, we will have our guest, Harry Turtledove. Okay, and we are back. Today we have Harry Turtledove. He is an escaped Byzantine historian. He found L. Sprague de Camp's Lest Darkness Falls in a secondhand bookstore at an impressionable age. Started trying to find out how much Sprague was inventing and how much was real, not much and quite a bit, respectively, and wound up with a PhD in Byzantine history.
Mm-hmm.
He has a note on here and says, "Do you want fries with that?" As someone with a liberal arts degree, I totally get it.
Oh God, yeah.
He got to tell Sprague about it too. He found him pleased and appalled in about equal measure. Turtledove writes alternate history, other science fiction, fantasy, much of it historically based, and when he can get away with it, straight historical fiction.
There you go.
He's been lucky enough to make a living by putting lies on paper since 1991. He is married to fellow writer and Broadway maven Laura Francos. They have 3 daughters, 2 granddaughters, and 3 enormously overprivileged cats, which I think Kat and I can both relate to that.
Oh God, yes.
So welcome, Harry.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for agreeing to come on. Very excited to get to chat with you.
Well, I'll probably cure that.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think so.
Oh, gosh. Kat, I'm having flashbacks to when we had James Morrow on after...
Oh, yeah.
After you all published, what, The Trumps Will Sound?
The Trump book.
Yeah.
The book that has probably got us on a list.
Yeah. We're gonna be in El Salvador, I think.
Oh God, it's funny because it's true.
Right? Oh gosh. Yeah. I've definitely said some things on this podcast that probably has me on the list too. So we'll all be there together.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you all, The Trumps Will Sound was the first time that I knew the two of you had worked together. And Kat, now you've edited this book for Harry. Harry and Kat, like, how did this come about?
Well, go ahead, Kat.
I think it was Shahid at Arc Manor, wasn't it?
That was my understanding, because I've known Shahid for years and years and years, and done some stuff for him. And he needed someone to translate what I had done this time around into English, and he chose Kat.
Well, yours are always a pleasure to edit because you have remarkably clean prose. So
thank you. I do appreciate that. Believe me.
Yeah, you definitely have a very straightforward, no nonsense style from everything that I've read from you.
I seem to be getting simpler as I get older, and you can take that however you want.
It's very zen of you. That's how we'll take it. Well, so talk to us, Gary, about Powerless. Tell us a little bit about how the premise of the book came to you.
I was reading a collection of Vaclav Havel's essays, and I came to a big important one called The Power of the Powerless. And he was talking, this was before the Soviet Union had fallen, and when he was still living in the Husak regime in Czechoslovakia, which was a country that existed at the time, and he was wondering what would happen to a man who ran, say, a grocery store, who got a poster of something boring like Workers of the World Unite, and said, I'm not going to put this up, and just chucked it in the wastebasket instead of putting it in the window the way he's supposed to. And I wrote a novelette about that.
You did.
And it got published in Fantasy and Science Fiction in 2018. And Greg Benford said to me before he had his stroke, he said, "You ought to turn that into a novel."
Yeah.
And so I did.
Nice.
And so, I thought, what would be the most appropriate way to turn it into a novel? And I mean, it's taken from Havel's starting point. And I thought, well, okay, let's do the Prague Spring in 1968, which I am old enough to remember. And so I, did my homework and started writing, and there it is.
I love the book because it is, for people that haven't read it yet, it is America that has basically become
communist.
Communist, that's it exactly. And,
it's a metaphor for any totalitarian society on the right or on the left.
Yeah. And it is very much about the sort of the power of the individual.
That's what I was writing about. My God, I was actually writing about something this time.
It's like you had a theme and everything.
Yeah, I had. I don't usually. I mean, I'm just sitting there telling a story, but this time I sort of knew where I was going, which is a pleasant novelty.
Well, it's a very different book than the last one I edited for you, which was the Gumshoe and the Vampire one.
Yeah. Twice as Dead, which has come out.
Yeah. And also a terrific read. But that is a much sort of funnier book than Powerless.
And it's funny, they're both set in Los Angeles, though in different parts of town. I mean, this is my city. I've lived in the area my whole life, not always in the city, but in the area.
I would argue, though, that Powerless definitely has some upbeat moments and definitely some funny moments in it for sure.
Yeah. But I was there were times in Twice as Dead when I got very silly, and I tried not to do that here.
Oh, that's funny. Actually, I found Powerless to be extremely upbeat considering everything that was going on in it. What was it important for you to keep that kind of upbeat tone?
There was, I remember in 68, and I tried to bring it into the novel, how much hope there was that what Alexander Dubček called communism with a human face could actually be a thing, because it was, if not ideal, certainly a hell of a lot more attractive than communism with Leonid Brezhnev's face, which was severely less than endearing. Leonid Brezhnev was all jowls and eyebrows and scowl, for those not old enough to remember him.
Would you agree that in a situation like that, or a situation that we're living in right now, the individual actually does have more power than they think?
Ask Cory Booker. Everybody has more power than he thinks. Not everybody. In fact, most people don't have the aptitude to use it or the nerve to use it, but it's there. I mean, God knows I'm no hero, and I don't pretend to be. I'm just a damn writer.
Well, I think that's why it is so important that, like, when one person steps up and it says to other people, "Oh, I could do that too," and so, yeah, I mean, the messages that encourage people to step up, I think, are very.
Yeah, there's a lot of reluctance, there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of good reason for fear.
Yeah,
because those sons of bitches can really do it to you if you irk them enough.
Yeah.
You are taking chances.
But we've still got things like the victory in Colorado with the judge. So, I mean, there are still some hopeful things, which is nice.
Which one was that, Kat? Did that just happen?
It's the one where Musk spent
Wisconsin,
didn't he,
that was.
what?
Wisconsin, that.
Oh, Wisconsin, that's it. But like he went in and he promised $2 million checks to voters.
Yes, and he put on a cheesehead hat to show what a great Green Bay guy he was, and oh yeah, yeah. We are all making revolted noises.
I know. We're all just like going, no.
Yeah. I mean, being in the science fiction community, as we all are, we all know, and sometimes are socially awkward people, but that guy is just.
Well, I don't know if I told you this, Alan. When I was SIFWA president, at one point when we were doing the Pittsburgh Nebulas, actually Musk was lined up to be our Toastmaster and then kind of ditched us
Oh my gosh.
fairly dramatically, which I'm very glad about now.
When he was just getting set up in Hawthorne, which is a town where I lived for 10 years, I thought, all right, this is a guy who's doing spacey things and he's a science fiction person. And could I write for this guy? And fortunately, I never inquired just as well. I mean, this is, retro me satanas.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been reading Speculative Whiteness, which is a thin academic. I want to call it a novel. It's not a novel. It's nonfiction, obviously, and it just kind of goes through the history of science fiction and kind of talks about how the alt-right kind of takes that stuff and uses it. But now I'm kind of wondering, what, in your opinions, like what about science fiction attracts these people? What is?
Well, there is a strain that runs through science fiction and that runs through authoritarianism of a facade of rationality behind which you can do damn near anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could totally see that. This leads me to another question. This question came up because I was reading this little nonfiction study about the alt-right and science fiction, and I'm wondering, like, Harry, do you ever worry that someone's going to like misappropriate your work, or and like how do you deal with that? Like, do you think there is a way to deal with that?
Readers are going to put what they put into your work, whether you think it's there or not, because when you're writing, you are not projecting onto a blank screen. All right, you will know that I wrote Guns of the South, the one where the cover shows Robert E. Lee holding an AK-47. You know that.
Right.
And I got invited to get a check and to appear at a banquet. This was in the 90s when the book was fairly new, that, for and by not just the descendants of Confederate soldiers, but the descendants of Confederate officers, don't you? Oh, yes.
Wow.
And I went, I mean, the affair was black tie or Confederate uniform. And since the Confederate uniform reminds me too much of, that gray reminds me too much of Feldgrau.
Yeah.
I put on a tux and went and, did my bit and got my check. And afterwards there was talk, and this fellow who was dressed as a Confederate surgeon came up to me and said that he was glad that in this book I had portrayed the antebellum South as not being a racist society. And I was a guest there, and I was a good boy, and I didn't, you idiot.
Yeah.
I was very good. There was the only African American person there was one of the waiters, I believe, and I wanted to get him aside and ask him what he thought of the bash. And I didn't have the nerve because I was part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an odd moment.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
I felt somewhere between Teddy Kennedy and Leon Trotsky at that gathering, somewhere in that range.
It's funny because I have actually seen speculation about you online before where, and I had been following you before everyone came over to Blue Sky, but I have seen speculation of people. Well, isn't he the one who wrote the Guns in the South? But it was one of those conversations like I just was not going to get involved with it, even though I'd seen you talking about Trump and all this other stuff. You know what I mean?
I am severely allergic to fascism. I'm sorry. I just am.
I think that is a good thing to be allergic to. And it is fun.
Yeah.
It was fun on Twitter to watch you smacking people down every once in a while.
Yeah.
Well, I had fun with it. I'll tell you why. I had in my bio on Twitter this little line that's a writer's throwaway line. And I said, I tell lies for a living. And they always thought that was some kind of gotcha when I made a political comment, like this can't possibly be true because he admits he tells lies for a living. I had great fun with those people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. That is so funny. I definitely think some of your arguments are up there with, some of Scalzi's heyday of arguing with trolls on the internet. There's definitely some fun stuff up there. One thing I'm curious about, a lot of the stuff that I've read by you has the United States breaking up into chunks. Okay.
Yeah.
Something that that is a personal theory of mine is that that's what part of the outcome of all this that's happening now is going to be. I am curious though, like from
At 9, Jim Morrow did that.
Oh, no, I know. I'm curious though, like as a historian and somebody who has thought through many different alternate versions of history, right? Like you are probably
I've been known to do that, yeah.
Yeah, time. You are probably a uniquely qualified person to answer my question. And my question is like how realistic is that? Is that something that would even work?
I have no idea. There are certain obvious difficulties to it, like what happens when the national government needs to keep ports on the Pacific coast after the West Coast tries to leave. So I mean, we may find out whether it'll work or not.
Well, I have a friend who is part of a movement in California to, secede as
Yes.
state. So, yeah.
Yes.
See, now I always thought California would be the first. My most recent theory has been, California goes. Although after this whole Gavin Newsom podcast, maybe not. I don't know what's going on.
I have no idea what went on with Newsom there. I mean, but I have never particularly trusted or admired him. Newsom's in it for Newsom before he's in it for anything else.
Yeah, from Pennsylvania, he looked pretty stand up, but we don't, you don't get the details here like you get when you're actually living in the state. You know what I mean? And then he did that podcast, and I'm just like, what is happening? What was I saying? Oh, so my theory was that it was going to be California, and then Texas was going to be like, yep, we're next, and then it was just going to go from there. However that ended up.
I suspect the places that will try to go are the West Coast and New England, New York, New Jersey. That's that's the big lump. Those are the lumps.
Yeah.
New England, New York, New Jersey is easily subtracted from the USA and either go it alone or add them to Canada.
Wow, that would be something if New England went to Canada. Yeah. I'm just praying Pennsylvania goes with New England. Come on, Pennsylvania.
Well, I'm in Indiana, so I know where we're going.
No.
You're screwed, Cat. There's no escape for you.
Yeah.
I have nice Canadian friends who've already said, "Oh, we're saving our guest bedroom for you."
Ah, that's funny. I'll end up living with Diane. Diane's
There
our
you go.
co-host, Harry. She's Canadian. I tell you, the last time we recorded with her, she was pissed about going to war with Canada and all this kind of
yeah.
Well,
stuff.
who could blame her? I mean, it's
Oh, God.
it's
Yeah.
insane.
It is frickin' embarrassing to be American
It
at the
really
moment.
is.
It's just
Ugh.
I mean, I really the only other time I've been embarrassed was I was in Cuba, visiting, and it was just before Trump reclosed all the stuff down with them, and I was embarrassed to be an American because they were just counting so much on that tourism, and he had just basically shut the door on it.
Mm.
So, yeah. So it's always Trump that makes me embarrassed.
Well, the Bush too was pretty good at it too, actually.
Oh,
We've had some good ones, yeah.
yes, he was. That's when I started formulating my theories back then. Yep.
Yeah?
Yep. Harry, how much research do you do for your novels? As you mentioned in your bio, many of them are very historically based.
You do what you need to try to find out about the period you're writing about how you can plausibly change it, about the people who are living then. And that is however much it takes, and it will vary from book to book. I mean, there are books that I've written where I got half a dozen books and okay, that was cool. I can make a book out of this. And there are books where I've accumulated a bookcase or two of stuff. So, I mean, it depends.
What are you working on right now?
I'm working on another Jack Mitchell book right this minute.
Oh, nice.
And I'm also working on a weird idea for a short story that I got. So I'll see what it turns into.
Oh, nice.
Okay, nice. You write just an insane amount. I mean that in a good way. I mean, I think Kat is probably the most prolific person I know. And then
No, Harry's more prolific than I am.
I was just about to say, and I think you're like 3 times as
Yeah.
prolific as Kat is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I sit there, words come out.
Yeah. Well, it's such a good feeling, right? The flow.
I think of it I'm rather like a snail. I secrete words the way it secretes slime, often with similar results.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Is there a way that you keep yourself inspired, like for new ideas or anything, or is like just cracking up a history book enough for you?
No, it's very strange. I know exactly when it was because it was at the 2011 World Fantasy Convention. I had this moment of what you could probably call existential despair, because that's what it felt like, because I felt, well, okay, I've said everything I've got to say. Now what the hell do I do? And what I did that particular night was I went out and got drunk. But the feeling doesn't entirely go away
Yeah.
from what other people have said. I am miles and miles away from the only person who's ever had it. I go on anyway, because what else are we going to do?
Yeah. You might as well do the thing that you love doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might as well do the thing I know how to do by now.
There you go.
too.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of years trying to figure out how to do this stuff, and I'm better than I was, I think. I don't know. You're never as good as you want to be. Nobody's ever as good as he or she wants to be.
No.
In my head, when I started selling stuff, I was going to be Heinlein and Ted Sturgeon all rolled into one, and that didn't happen. Nope. I'm just me. I'm stuck with being me.
think you're a pretty good person to be, Harry, though. You've written a lot.
Thank you. Some people would cheerfully inform me that there is a difference between quantity and quality. I mean, we all know people like that. We love them so much.
Well, I had a friend who every once in a while we'd compare output, and she'd get this kind of faintly distressed look on her face and then say, "But you don't keep all the words you write, do you?" And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, whatever."
One of the things that has let me write as much as I write is that I am lucky enough, and I don't know how else to put it, to be able to write very clean first draft copy.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It takes some cleaning up as I transcribe it, but it doesn't take a whole lot of ripping apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and that's luck. I don't know why, there's no particular reason that I can think of why that should be so, but it is, or seems to be.
Well, it's skill. I mean, a skillful writer knows how to put sentences together, and if you are not skillful by the time you have finished 120 books, my friend.
I mean, there are people who are my age who go through lots of drafts, and they are,
Oh, yeah.
I tend to quote Kipling's poem in the Neolithic Age when, because everybody does it differently. That, Kipling said, there are 69 ways of constructing tribal lays, and every single one of them is right.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody finds out what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking of Peter Beagle, actually, and he's the opposite, right?
He's one of the people I'm jealous of.
Oh, God,
he was so good. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I have his new one lined up on my audiobook app here soon.
I've got it. I haven't really got into it yet. I've been doing stuff,
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I heard it's really good, though.
But he is one of those writers where you can read one of the sentences and just sort of stop and look at the sentence for a while because it's just so pretty.
He's one of those people that I read to clear my own head out, before I sit down to write.
And he's so whimsical, but
there's always stuff under there, though.
Right. It's not like throwaway whimsy, right? It's like,
no, it's there's stuff under there.
There's heart to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't think of a single other writer that has as much heart as he does.
No, well, and you and I were both at the Nebula Awards where Beagle became the Grandmaster.
Yes.
And I don't know, were you at it was the evening reception where he sang us all a lullaby?
I don't think I.
And it was, it just makes me slightly teary even just to think of it. It was just so sweet. Yeah. He was amazing.
Astonishing writer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
One of those writers who make you think, why the hell am I even bothering?
Oh, that's it. Well, I asked my students, my short story class the other day, and I was like, I want you to bring in a story by one of those writers. It's one of those stories that makes you hate the writer a little bit for being so good. And it was a great session.
Man. Yeah. I'm curious, who did they bring?
Sarah Pinsker was one. God, I have to go back and look. It's been like a week or so. And
if nobody brought a Ted Sturgeon story, then you've got a bunch of young kids in your class.
That's it. We don't have, most of them are younger. But one of the things I've been doing is with my Patreon, we have a short story discussion club where each month we talk about a 20th century short story. Mm-hmm. And we have read a number of Sturgeon stories in there.
A Way of Thinking is the one that always gets me. Oh my God.
We read The World Well Lost.
Yes.
And I hadn't known until we read it. I guess the first editor, Sturgeon, showed it to, and I forget who it was, of course, now. But hated the story so much, he called up all the editors and was like, "Sturgeon's gonna try to sell you this story. Don't even read it." And
What?
yes, 'cause it's sympathetic to homosexuality.
Yep.
And it's not a story that starts out announcing that, but it's like a little fish trap, and by the end of it, you find out these people you have identified with so thoroughly, are gay, and I think it was a really shocking story for a lot of
Or
people
about
who. Yeah.
1951 or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
around. Yep.
Sturgeon is one of my embarrassing missed spots, like one of those authors I just have not gotten to yet.
I think he is the best writer this field ever had, just as a writer.
Interesting. Question for you, Harry. You have been in this field for quite some time at this point.
I'm old, yes, I know that. Thank you.
Can you think of any good, authors that have kind of faded over the years that wish people would remember?
Well, Sturgeon is certainly one. Edgar Pangborn,
Yeah.
Cordwainer Smith, who was
Wow.
Paul Linebarger, who was Sun Yat-sen's godson in China.
Oh, I've heard about yes. I listened to a podcast about him specifically. I can't remember.
Amazing.
It was amazing, yeah.
Who was also a psychology professor who wrote the first book about psychological warfare. And another one very much on the other side of things politically, but when he was on, he could write like a son of a gun and tell a hell of a story, is H. Beam Piper,
Yeah.
who had a revival in the 80s and then disappeared again.
And wrote the Little Fuzzy books, which
but
were so delightful.
those are great, but the ones that aren't just entertainment. The Space Viking alarms me because I think Putin read it and he's using the techniques in it to conquer the United States. It was how you conquer a civilized planet from space.
Oh yeah,
by subverting it.
I have read some of his work, and he had something about an archaeologist going to, I think it was Mars, and they found a building, and then they had to figure out.
Oh yes, omnilingual. Yeah, I know
it.
that one.
I love that story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But I mean, that's a Campbell puzzle story. The ones where he gets deeper into people and into what make people tick are more interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. 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 How have you managed to keep yourself relevant all this time? Because a lot of people fade out.
I don't know that I have, but
well, I mean,
I
think you have. I mean, you published three books this year you have coming out, and
yes,
anyone I talk to is, knows who you are. So,
well, okay, that's good to hear. I hope they all buy this stuff.
I will let them know.
I don't know. I'm just going along. I'm writing stories. I'm writing stuff that that interests me, and I hope it interests other people too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is I think what writers do all the time.
Yeah.
If you're writing for a particular audience and not much caring yourself about what you're writing about, that mostly doesn't fly.
Another good example, I think, would be I recently read a story of yours in Clark's World. Now, I think it was a little bit, but it wasn't only a couple of years ago, I believe. And Clark's World's it's a happening magazine, right?
Well, I have had more rejections than acceptances from him, but I'll I think.
I mean, it's Neil. I mean, everybody has. I think.
Yeah.
But so it's always a good market to try. A, because it pays well, and B, because the response is pretty fast. And if you send it to somebody else, in a couple of weeks instead of waiting 6 months before you have to send it to somebody else.
Yeah. I'm also curious, now, hopefully I got my research correct here, but your first couple novels were Sword and Sorcery, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I did not know that.
Oh yes, I was. I'll tell you how that happened. Um, I wrote a novel every summer from the time when I was 14 through the time when I was about 21. And then there were about 5 years when I wrote next to no fiction because I was doing serious grad school stuff.
Mhm.
And one day, the prof under whom I was studying lost a chapter of my dissertation. And he said, "Oh, you'll have a carbon, right?"
Oh,
Oh no.
No. It did eventually turn up, but I did not know that it would at the time, and I walked across the UCLA campus, which is a large place, cussing to a friend of mine that there had to be another way to make a living besides this blankety meep grad
Uh-huh.
school crap. And I pulled out the novel that I had last written when I was 21, and I was 26 by this time and married, and not to the lady I'm married to now yet, but enough to have learned a little something about the other half of the species. And I started reworking it, and my ex took a look at it. She was a bright lady. That was not why we didn't get along. There were other reasons. And she said, this isn't too bad, but there isn't really a whole lot of detail about, where they actually are and what it looks like and what it feels like. And I thought about that and I said, yeah, you're probably right. And I wrote a scene around a campfire and it had a lot of that detail in it. And she looked at it and she kind of looked at me like, I didn't know you had that in you. I hadn't quite known I had it in me either. And I thought, maybe I can do something with this. And I just, and when I started sending it out, eventually it stuck with a bottom feeder press, which said that they were going to rename me Eric Iverson because no one would believe Harry Turtledove. And they did. So my first two novels appeared under the name Eric Iverson, and some of my early short fiction appeared under the name Eric G. Iverson. I put the G in myself. It stood for goddamn. And then I sold the four books of Byzantine fantasy in the Videsso cycle to Lester Del Rey.
Oh, nice.
And Lester said, I don't want to publish these under the Iverson byline. I want to publish them under the Turtledove byline because people will remember it. And I said, but I'm just, I said, but I have reasons for wanting now to keep the Iverson byline because I can use it to separate my fiction from my academic nonfiction, which I was still doing a little bit of.
Uh-huh.
And I said, also, I'm starting to get known under that byline. And he said, if you want to stay Iverson, I won't buy them.
Oh, gosh.
wow.
And so I thought about that for a weekend and greed won. Surprise. So I may be the only writer in captivity or out of it who has had both his pen name and his own name imposed on him by force.
That's so awesome.
Stories of a writing life.
That's funny. So funny.
It's funny now. A lot less funny then.
Oh, I can imagine. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
So how did you make the move from Sword and Sorcery to alt history or
Well, I started selling science fiction, and the science fiction that I sold, a lot of it was alternate history. At first, a lot of it was Byzantine alternate history because that was what I knew. And the Videsso's books, of course, are Byzantine fantasy because that was what I knew. It was kind of cool. Lester wrote me in his acceptance letter that one of the reasons he liked this was because it seemed plausible, but it wasn't based on any actual history. And I just, I did not enlighten him. I just smiled and glad you think so, Lester. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll never tell.
Smile and cash the check.
Yes, ma'am.
That is so funny.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff was based on stuff that I had translated from the Greek and that was not published in English yet. So
Oh.
Ah.
I'll never tell.
I was reading an interview with you doing some research, and one thing that you said was, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, something like, being a historian is cool because you get to find these weird little strange things that have happened in history, and then you can kind of like use them. I'm very curious if you have any examples of strange things in history that occur to you.
Well, okay. I wrote, came out in 2022. I wrote a book called 3 Miles Down.
Yes.
Okay. In 1968, a Russian sub sank north of Hawaii in the Pacific, in 3 miles of water. And the Russians searched for it, but couldn't find it. And we searched for it, and we did find it. And at the cost of about the equivalent of a moon landing, the CIA built this enormous ship, the Hughes Globar Explorer, to go and raise the sub and try to examine the nuclear-tipped missiles on it, get the Russian code books, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
This really happened.
Yeah.
And this all started coming unglued, and they raised about the front third of it because the rest broke off as it was being lifted. And I thought, why did the sub sink? What if an alien ship on the bottom of the Pacific sank it?
Oh, awesome.
And as soon as I thought that, A, I wrote it down so I wouldn't lose it. And B, I started doing homework, and the author photo in that book shows me wearing a hat and shades and a mask because I wrote that book just as the COVID epidemic was starting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my jacket photo.
Man, the CIA just does the weirdest stuff. There's always the weirdest stories about them, and they're usually true.
Yeah. And now we have people like Tulsi Gabbard running these things.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Why isn't she? I presume she just emails everything straight to Vladimir Vladimirovich.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah. Probably on Gmail.
No, they use.
Or on
I was
Signal.
about to say Signal. I don't know. Can you attach files to Signal as Signal messages? I'm not sure.
Yes, you can.
You can. Oh God.
You can.
Oh, that's so funny. I guess we'll go back to politics here. Wait, how do you see what's happening here in the States affecting the rest of the world?
They're looking at us like we've lost our collective minds, and we have.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, we have a nutcase in the White House.
Yep.
And everybody knows it. I mean, come on, everybody knows it, but here we are.
Yep.
Up that creek without that paddle.
Crazy time.
See, I'm being a good boy. I'm not swearing too much.
It's totally fine if you do. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
We are getting close on time here. I know you're a big baseball fan. Now, I am not a huge baseball fan, but I do live in Pittsburgh, and I do love Pittsburgh. I'm curious for our baseball fans that do listen to this podcast, assuming there are some. Do you see the Pirates, not sucking anytime soon?
Diplomatic.
Well, I'll tell you.
Hey, listen,
Kat, here's the way it goes.
I'm an Angels fan, so we'll see who sucks faster,
Kat, this is how it works every single year. oh, they've got this new player. This new player is amazing. They're going to go all the way this year. It's going to be fantastic. They do great for like, I don't know, a month, and then straight down to the toilet, right? For the whole rest of the
Right.
year.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's been like 20 years like this, Cat. All right. Well, I guess we should wrap it up here, huh?
We probably should.
Okay. So, Harry, we warned you about this question at the top. What is bringing you hope right now?
I hope the Dow doesn't go down as much tomorrow as it did today.
There you go.
Boy.
You know, I don't think there's any guarantee of that, but I hope anyway.
Has anyone checked in the last hour what it is? Because
Well, it ended up down almost 1,700.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the other thing was that today, appropriately enough, Newsmax rang the opening bell.
Ugh.
And look what they presided over.
Yeah. Ugh. That is very appropriate. Almost seems planned, actually.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It's so weird. What projects do you have coming up soon that you want everyone to know about?
Well, let's see. Twice as Dead, my noirish post-war urban fantasy, came out March 18th, so that's available at any place you can find books that are either printed or listenable to. Coming in May is a fantasy set in a city that looks a lot like occupied Paris just before and just after the liberation. It's called City in Chains. It's about collaboration and resistance. And coming in July, as Kat knows because she edited it, is Powerless, my alternate history modeled on the Prague Spring of 1968, except set in Los Angeles. And there, you know, there will be other stuff as time goes by.
Well, that's a lot. That's all in a couple months, 3 months. Everything's coming out. So,
yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah. Publishing, because they're split between two publishers, and publishing schedules get weird sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'll definitely be looking forward to those. Kat, are you going to be editing any more of Harry's in the future?
I hope so.
I hope so too, because I don't scream when you do.
That's a sign of success.
You love a good editor, and when the edits or the copy edits are not good.
Oh, it's awful.
When the kids were smaller, Laura would ask me, "Is this a hide the children copy edit?" And sometimes they were.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I could translate that into my world quite well.
Yep.
Where can everyone find you online?
My primary outlet these days, I am at HNTDove at bisky.social. Sort of like lobster bisky, but not quite.
That's it.
Awesome.
I like that.
Awesome. And on Blue Sky, I might add.
That's true.
And on Blue Sky. Everyone should go and follow Harry on Blue Sky and watch him trash the fools.
Yes.
It's quite amusing.
It's not as much on Blue Sky because, you just block them and they really go away.
They really do.
Oh gosh. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Had a great time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And that was our interview with Harry Turtledove. Before we continue on, don't forget to share our podcast with your friends on Facebook or Twitter. Please rate and review. If you're wondering how else you can support us, check us out at patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. If anybody even has money when this finally comes out, who knows? Money might not even exist by that point.
Who knows?
It is legitimately a mystery right now. But if it does exist when this comes out, we'd appreciate your support if you're able to contribute.
If it does exist, please give us some.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
I'm leaving this whole
All
thing
right.
in, Kat. I'm not taking any of this out.
That's fine. That's fine.
Oh, gosh. All right. We've got some book reviews over there. I've done separately. We have discounts to the Rambo School for Wayward Writers, and we also let our Patreons pick some of the folks that come on this show, which we actually need to talk about that, Kat. But
We should.
yeah, also we have a coffee account that's KOFI, and you can send us money that way too. So that's about enough of that. First, let me say I was actually a little intimidated having Harry come on, to be honest with you.
Well, he is an intimidating guy, right? He is just a major presence in the field. And as you know from seeing him handle fools on Twitter, he's about as sharp as they come.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting to see the difference between him online and then, like him well, not in
Yeah,
person, but like on the phone, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, where he's just shooting the shit with us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Once we kind of got started at the very beginning, I like my stress level immediately dropped.
Oh, that's good.
Oh gosh. It's amazing to have someone on here with that much of a career, and
Yeah.
honestly, kind of legendary. I know he
Yeah.
probably wouldn't admit that, but
No, he wouldn't, but he is.
what's your favorite work of his that you've read?
Oh man. I actually that one that he talked about, Guns of the South, I think is a really interesting book.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was interesting to hear him talk about it, because it is a book that lets people be people.
Uh-huh.
People aren't caricatures, and so I think that's an interesting. But he is very good at doing people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will admit now I've only read a few things by him, and like I don't know, probably maybe like 3 or 4 short stories,
Uh-huh.
mostly on Clark's World because Clark's World's one of my go-tos. I read his work on the Trump on Sound, and I've read
Oh yeah.
Powerless, and I honestly think that's the extent of my experience with his work, but I really loved Powerless. Like I didn't know what to expect going into it,
Yeah. Yeah.
I expected it to be different than the Trumps Will Sound, his part in that.
Uh-huh.
It was extremely different than that, actually, even though very similar kind of themes,
Yeah. Yeah.
And he really did do a great job with the characters in there. I mean, Powerless mostly follows. There's one character really that it follows.
Yeah, the main character, the shopkeeper.
Yeah, yeah. But he did such a great job of like humanizing that person and making
Oh
them
yeah.
hopeful and funny at times. But
Yeah.
you really
Well, and
connected with them.
the
Yeah,
family is, I think, really nicely done.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So, what are you reading these days?
I'm reading Henry Lean's new book on writing called Spring Summer Asteroid Bird: The Art of Eastern Storytelling.
Okay.
He's somebody we should have on the show at some point. I think he'd be a good person to talk to. And then I'm reading A Market of Dreams and Destiny by Trip Galley, I think it is, which I picked up because it has a blurb by Patrick Ness, whose work I love. He described it as rich with wonder, and it's pretty good so far. It's a solid fantasy, good queer fantasy. There you go.
Cool. I'll have to look those up.
Yep. What are you reading?
What am I reading? I am still reading Moby Dick because that book is endless.
That's awesome.
To be fair to Moby Dick, I've been reading it very slowly. So
Yeah, Moby Dick's worth reading slow.
yeah, definitely. Like, where am I in Moby Dick now? Let's see what just happened. Let's see. He's talking about them chopping up the whales. Let's see this thing. Oh, that's right. there was the boy, the African American boy on the ship, and he was rowing the boat, and they left him in the ocean. That's right.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the last chapter I read. Anyway, I'm in like the last quarter now. I'm getting really close to the end.
Okay, so you're in the home stretch, really.
I'm in the home stretch. Yeah, totally. I'm also reading, well, I mentioned it during the podcast. I'm reading Speculative Whiteness by Jordan S. Carroll, which it's only 100 pages, but it's academic, and I've been taking notes. I'm actually planning to bring him on and do like a little, kind of like a bunch of little mini interviews.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I just requested it through my library.
Oh, it's very interesting. Very interesting. I think I'm just going to open a giant can of worms about Heinlein and get hate mail for the rest of my life. So, what the hell, you know?
Fair enough. Well, yeah.
Well, you know, like the reason I say Heinlein specifically is because so many people interpret him in the completely opposite way, right?
Oh, well, I mean, have you ever read Farnham's Freehold?
I have not.
Okay, so that's a Heinlein book where there's like a nuclear war and people end up time traveling to the future, and it's a future where the blacks are in power and the whites are all enslaved. And it is not as nuanced as it could be, is all I will say about that.
Got it. I mean, there's a lot of arguments around, what's his one? Oh gosh, it's one of the really famous ones. You know, a lot of people name it as the first military sci-fi.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers, yeah.
Yeah, which has a Puerto Rican protagonist.
Yeah, you know, and I think, like, that kind of stuff is, like, why people get so confused about him, I think, you know? You know, on one hand, you've got this thing that's kind of racist, and then on the other hand, you've got a protagonist that's Puerto Rican, you know what I mean? And
well, I think part of it is that, I mean, he was around for a long, long time. And so he does have period. I mean, much like Picasso, right? Picasso had very distinct periods. And I think Heinlein did too. And he does have, like in his earlier years, he is very pro-military and does say things like, you know, military is what kind of teaches you to be a decent human being. And then later on, he gets a lot more hippie.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's like my father's trajectory as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What and then the last thing I'm reading is the newest Nuzo Ono book, Where the Dead Brides Gather, which has been interesting.
Ooh, that's a great title.
Yes. And her stuff is so I love her work. Part of it is just such an interesting setting and a different, you know, like worldly perspective on things. Part of it is she's like legitimately funny in a horror novel. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The last novel of hers I read, you know, I can't remember the characters' titles. I was trying to remember them. Not the titles, their names, but their names were hilarious. You know what I mean? And then,
yeah.
And the men in that book were just so, they're like Homer Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like, so dumb. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
But, you know, she was making a point, of course, you know, with the characters. But, but there's also like this, you know, like, you know, the medicine man and like zombies and like people being like ripped apart, you know what I mean? And like all the
very
horror
cool
stuff, you know what I mean? So, I've always been a big fan of hers, and I'm enjoying this one so far. I'm only about 60 or 70 pages in, but it's been fun, and I'm gonna review that one too. So.
Sounds good.
So I guess that's it for us this week, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks to everybody for listening. We appreciate your time. We are bringing you hope one episode at a time.